Hey, hi, hey going, it's your mate Valstrider, and today we're doing a full PAL tier list. Let's check it out. Okay, this one's going to be a ton of fun, but before I get into ranking each of the PALs, I want to quickly talk through each of the different categories I'm using so that you can understand some of my decision making along the way. So all the way at the top, we've got the typical S tier, best of the best, and I'm going to be filling this with combat PALs, utility PALs, and worker PALs alike. And then below that, we've got solid for all of those PALs who are still really good and really useful, but they just didn't quite make it into the best of the best. And then below that, I've got special niche. Now, this is going to be one of the most interesting categories because I'm going to use this for all of the PALs who play a particular role or have partner skills that might have potential in the future if there is a specific need that arises for them. So I'm still going to be putting some utility PALs all the way up in best of the best, but those are going to be the ones that are particularly relevant in the current endgame meta, whereas these are going to be ones that are more, maybe, we're considering the future potential a little bit more. And then below that, I've got a category, I just think they're neat, and this is going to be for all the PALs who are near and dear to my heart, and I just don't have the heart to rank them any lower on the list. And then below that, I've got mostly useless and completely useless, which are both pretty self-explanatory. And then finally, we've got a special place in hell for all of those PALs that we just wish didn't exist. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's jump into ranking the PALs. And remember, if you enjoy this content and you want to keep seeing more like it, remember to like, comment, subscribe, really helps out the channel a lot. First cab off the rank, we have Mel Packer, and I'm just throwing this guy into mostly useless. You could argue he's in completely useless, but early game, it might be relevant to put into a ranch for farming wool. So we're going to leave him up there in mostly useless. As far as Kitsune and Kitsune Noct go, these guys I'm pretty confident to just throw into completely useless. They're not really doing anything for us that some other PAL isn't going to be able to do better. And next up, we've got Anubis, and this is an easy case for S tier. I think it would be hard to argue against this. Not only is Anubis a really powerful combat PAL, and he has the best stats amongst all of the ground elemental PALs, but he's also a really good worker PAL with that natural level 4 in handiwork. And then beyond that, he's really good in the late game for putting in your breeding bases and farming en masse so that you can disassemble them and get the PAL souls. So he's just as effective in death as he is in life. And then next up, we've got Nyphea. Now, I'd like to put this one probably in completely useless, but I won't. I might rank it a little bit higher in mostly useless just because it does have that unique partner skill and it has the shotgun. So that's kind of cool, but it's really just not that powerful, so I can't put it any higher than this. And then next up, we've got the two Incinerams. Now, if I were ranking PALs based on their potential for, if you were to give them the work suitability books, how good could they be? I might be tempted to put this one all the way up into solid, because any dark PAL that has another work suitability, like in this case it has kindling, has the potential to be pretty highly ranked. But I'm actually going to not account for those because they're really rare, and I don't expect any random player to necessarily have access to them, or at least enough of them to get a PAL all the way up to level 5 in a particular work suitability. So I'm going to completely disregard them for the entirety of this tier list. So I'm going to rank him all the way down in completely useless given that logic. And we're going to put the other Incineram down here as well. Now, as far as the Mao and Mao Christ goes, I'm going to put both of these into mostly useless. So the only case for these not being completely useless is that you can put them in a ranch in the early game and they can farm gold for you. It's not a very effective gold farm, but it's at least something, and it might be worthwhile doing in the early game. And then next on the list, we've got the two Capricities, and I'm going to just throw these guys straight into completely useless. They're not really doing much for us other than giving us berries when we farm them in the wild. And then we've got the two Vinworms. Now, I actually rate these PALs pretty highly, to be honest. I'm going to put Vinworm Christ all the way up into solid. And part of the rationale here is he is a really good early game cooling PAL because he has that dark typing. And spoiler alert, I will be accounting for how good they are in the early game as part of my rationalization. So that's never going to be enough justification to get a PAL up into best of the best, but it is going to be able to put them all the way up into at least solid. And Vinworm Christ, I'm going to put a little bit lower. I'm sorry, the normal Vinworm. I'm going to put him just down into mostly useless. He is a good early game mount, but I just don't think that's enough to put him any higher. Moving on, we've got Necromus up next, and this one's going to be kind of hard to rank. Necromus is an incredibly powerful combat PAL, but I just don't know if he's quite good enough to be best of the best, because I still think there's other PALs I'd take before Necromus. But it'd be pretty close. I think I'm actually going to put Necromus up in best of the best. We might move this later if we decide against it, but he is, I think he ranks pretty highly amongst the dark types. As far as firepower goes, he might be up there at number 2. And his overall firepower is really high, even amongst all of the elemental types. So I'm going to give it to him up there. And then looking at, yeah, and then we're looking at this as well. So Shadowbeak I want to throw up here for similar reasons. Shadowbeak does take the highest defense amongst the dark pals. So he at least takes the edge in that respect. And Shadowbeak does probably have a better unique or exclusive move set. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to move Necromus down. I'm going to leave Shadowbeak up here. Shadowbeak's also a flying mount pal. So he has that going for him. And he does have a good move pool. And he does at least excel in one stat. Whereas Necromus, I don't think has the highest across any of them. Next up, we've got a Astagon. Now, this one's an easy best of the best as well. This is your premier mining pal because he's a dark type, so he's never going to need to sleep. You've naturally got the nocturnal passive on him, and he also has that natural level 4. So this is going to be the best endgame mining pal. And then we've got Smokey. So Smokey is one of those interesting pals where we might want to put him into special niche. Like, this is where I would probably naturally want to put this pal, except for the fact that his special niche is really relevant in the end game. So what Smokey is going to do is help you find and better farm Chromite, which is a really important end game resource. So with that in mind, I am actually going to put him all the way up in best of the best because he is the best at what he does, and what he does is important once you get to the end game. And then behind that, we've got Brunelia. Now this one is easy going into the best of the best for me. She doesn't actually have any natural level 4 work suitabilities, but she does have the partner skill that is going to increase your yields from your crops. So her and Lulu, which we'll talk about a bit later, are really good for your farming setups, and you definitely want to have some of these in base. They're going to just maximize your outputs there. So this easily makes best of the best given its partner skill and the utility from that. Then we've got Azurobe, and this one's quite interesting. I think I have to put this one as the first to go into special niche. Now, this is a really good pal for its ability, which converts the player's damage into the water elemental type, and that can be particularly useful for the Blazimat Ryu raid. And it used to probably be up in the S tier because that raid used to be a lot harder. But now that the game has progressed a little more, as far as in terms of max level, you can kind of just complete that raid with any number of pals. So the, I guess, importance of Azurobe has been reduced a little bit. So I'm just going to throw that one into special niche because that might come back around if converting our damage into water type becomes more relevant in the future. And then next up, we've got Fuak, who is pretty much good for nothing. We'll just throw him straight in there. Next up, we've got Azamane, and this one can pretty easily be put all the way up into best of the best as well. This is the highest overall ranking electric pal as far as firepower goes. So you know it's got good combat stats. And not only that, it also is one of only 2 pals who naturally get level 4 in the electricity work suitability. So it's really good for your bases. It's really good for combat. Easily best of the best, and this might even be more relevant moving into the Tides of Terraria DLC if some of our raids end up being water typing, or maybe our tower boss is a water type, so you're going to get stab damage out of this guy's combat. Moving along now, we've got Rush Boar, and I'm pretty comfortable just throwing this one into completely useless. Then we've got Sutsia after that, and I think I'm going to throw this one all the way up into solid because he does just have a really good mix of work suitabilities. Oh, but he's not really an early game pal, so I can't rank him highly for that. And I don't want to put him in special niche because it's not really a special case, but I can't. He's just better than mostly useless. So I think I'm going to leave this guy up in solid. He's just got a lot of various work suitabilities, and you can stick him in a ranch and get bones, which, look, that's not worth a whole lot on its own, but when you just consider overall his utility, he's got a good typing, and he's got some good work suitability, so we're going to leave him up here in solid. Penking actually is an easy choice for solid for me, and this is mostly on the basis that he's a really good early game worker pal. So again, like Sutsia, he's got a lot of versatility in his work suitabilities, but this one is going to be really accessible early on. You definitely want to get your hands on a Penking. Lift Monk, we can pretty just comfortably throw in a completely useless. I think this one's called Tombat. I can't even remember its name, so I can't remember its name. It probably doesn't do much. I think this one's a decent mining power, but yeah, we're going to have better early game choices. I'm just going to throw this guy in completely useless. I'm pretty comfortable with that. Catris and Catris Ignis, I'm going to put into special niche for Catris Ignis, but I am going to put the normal Catris all the way up in the best of the best. Now, the reason for this is both of these have the loot increasing passives. So if you've got Catris out, you're going to be able to kill neutral pals and get more drops from those pals. And the same can be said for Catris Ignis, but Catris Ignis is going to do it for grass types. So it's going to increase the drops you get from grass types. However, there's not so much relevancy with the grass types at the moment, at least, but it may become more relevant down the track, depending on what kind of grass types we get added into the game. But for Catris, the dark version, this is an incredibly important ability because this is actually going to lead to the fastest endgame dog coin farms. And dog coin farming is particularly important because it's going to help you get the IV skill fruits, which you need for the endgame. So I'm putting this one all the way up in best of the best because that ability is particularly relevant in the current endgame meta. And then moving on, we've got Felbat next, and this is an easy choice. This just goes all the way up in S tier straight away. This is one of the best combat powers in the game because of its lifesteal passive, which is going to help you recover health based on the damage you do. Moving on, we've got Chicopee next, and I do like this pal, not enough to put it into the I just think it's neat category. So I'm going to have to stick this into mostly useless. It is decent in the early game for laying eggs in the ranch, and the eggs are important for making cake. But later game, it's just going to be way more efficient to use gold to purchase eggs. So I can't rank him any higher than this. Tokoto or Torikoto, this guy actually gets a special place in hell because I just hate these pals that blow up when they come after you. Just, especially in the early game, it's incredibly annoying. Late game, it doesn't matter. You can just tank the damage. But early game, they're just a pest. So this guy's an absolute menace. Then we've got Mozzarina next. This guy I'm just going to put straight next to Chicopee for the same reason. Then we've got Cinemoth next, and I think I could pretty comfortably just put this guy into completely useless. He's not really doing anything particularly important for us. And then next up, we've got Vixie, and this pal is pretty adorable. I'm going to put it in mostly useless though. So it does have the partner skill that is going to allow it to be put into a ranch and give you a whole bunch of pal spheres. And that can be really useful in the early game because you need more pal spheres, and getting them for free or passively is quite handy. But later game, it's just not like, it just, you know, this gets leveled out of pretty quickly. So I'm going to leave it down in mostly useless. Fuddler, though, we can pretty safely just put into completely useless. Same thing for Xenovita, I think it is. Cognito, I haven't actually tried this guy myself, but I am hearing that he's pretty important, or he's potentially a really good rescue pal for the pal pod strategies on the Xenolord raid. I haven't tried it myself, so I can't put him too high. I'm going to rank him into mostly useless. No, you know, I'm going to put him into special niche. I'm going to trust the word of others here and say that he's a good rescue pal, though I haven't tried it myself. Let's chuck him into special niche. Next up, we've got Xenolord, and this guy is easily going up into best of the best. So this guy is one of the best endgame mounted pals. He's incredibly fast, up there with Jetta Dragon, and he's also a really strong combat pal. So amongst the Dragon pals, he has the highest overall stats, ranking number 1 for firepower. And then next on the list, we've got both of the Menacings, and these guys can pretty comfortably go into special niche for the exact same reason that Catris is in here. Now, they're both ground types, one being ground dark, the other just being pure ground, but that means they're both going to give us more drops from electric pals. And Ecthadir, I'm not even sure how you pronounce this, but this guy is also going straight into this category, but for a really obscure reason. So this guy, if you get an alpha version of one of these, in case you're not aware, you can walk into any body of water until you're deep enough that the character model is just under the water. And then if you log out and log back in again, once you log back in, you will be under the water and you'll be able to walk around on the bottom of the waterbed. So you'll be able to do a whole bunch of building while you're underneath the water, which is really cool. Very specific niche use case scenario, but that's exactly what this category is for. Moving on, we've got Daydream next, and I'd like to put this guy up in solid because he does have one of those partner skills that is going to allow it to roam freely or be out with the player while it's just in your party. But that ability is just unfortunately not very strong. So I'm not going to be able to leave him up here. It's just a bit too weak at the moment. If they buff it or change it in the future, maybe we can reconsider. But for now, I have to kick this guy all the way down to mostly useless. Digtoist next, and this is a pretty easy one for me. I'm comfortable putting this guy all the way up into solid on the rationale that he's a fantastic early game mining pal. So same reasoning we have the Penking up here and the Sootseer and the Vinworm Crest. I'm comfortable with all of these being up here just based on the logic that they're good in the early game. And then next up, we've got Gale Claw. Rip the animation for this one, but I'm easily going to put this guy up in the best of the best. This is one of the best utility pals in the game. The glider passive that this guy is going to give you to allow you to glide really fast and not have too much drop is just second to none. Like, you always want one of these guys in party if you have the room for it. Next up, I've got Sparker, and this is an easy one to just throw straight into special niche. And this is because he's one of the few booster pals. So while you have a Sparker in party, it's going to increase the attack power of all of your electric pals. That is going to be stackable as well. So you can have up to 4 of these guys. And then you might want to have an Azumane as your one main combat pal. And he's going to get up to an 80% increase to his attack. So this guy definitely earns a spot in special niche. You want to be using these for a lot of the endgame tower bosses to try and maximize your pal damage. Grizzbolt next. I can't say as many good things for Grizzbolt, so I think I have to probably put this guy in mostly useless, unfortunately. The minigun is pretty cool, and he's generally quite powerful, but he's just not powerful enough to be all the way up at solid. So I'm just going to leave him down here in mostly useless. And then we've got the 2 Ephorams next. I think I can put both of these guys in mostly useless. No, sorry, the Ephorams can go all the way up into special niche for the same reason that the Catras and the Menacings can, because these guys increase drop rates for particular elemental types. And then moving on, we have Dazumu next, who I'm really comfortable just throwing all the way up into best of the best. This is probably the premier ground mount. Fenglope and Fenglope Lux. This used to be one of the best ground mounts in the game, but I think I'd take a Dazumu now instead. So I'm going to put Fenglope in solid, and the other one up there as well. Now, notably, this one does have one of these partner skills that increases drop rate, so you could put him down in special niche, but I just don't think it's fair to rank him lower if he's equally as good as this Fenglope and he's up here in solid. So I'm going to put them both up in here because they are still really good ground mounts. And then next up, we've got both of the Pyrans, and I'm going to be able to throw these guys straight into special niche because they have the... What do these guys do? Is it increase drop rates? No, these guys convert the player damage to fire when you mount them. Ruby is another one of the booster pals, so this can go straight in there with Sparker. I'll kind of just try and sit these together. Arsox, I don't think this guy does anything, so I'm going to put him in completely useless. And then next up, we've got Dinobossum and Dinobossum Locks. These guys can just go straight into completely useless as well. The Petalia can probably go into... Oh, this is kind of tough. So Petalia is a decent early game pal for your farming, but it just gets outclassed pretty quickly. I'm going to throw this down into completely useless. Floppy can go into completely useless as well. Celery up next. Now, if I were considering the work suitability books, we could probably put this guy a lot higher, but I'm not. I'm going to throw him into mostly useless. He is a glider pal, so he's got that going for him. Now, Wixen and Wixen Noct. I am pretty comfortable putting these guys all the way up into solid. Actually, what I'm going to do, I'm going to put normal Wixen into special niche for its ability and Wixen itself into solid. And they both have the same ability, but it's for different elements, and one is more relevant than the other at the moment. So Wixen is going to convert the player damage into the fire element, and Wixen Noct is going to do it for dark. But the fire one is just more relevant at the moment in the current endgame meta because of the Bjorn and Bastigor tower boss. So Wixen is actually going to help you get some of the fastest endgame clears on that Bjorn and Bastigor fight. So, I mean, with that in mind, I'm actually going to throw this guy all the way up into S tier. Like, he's the best pal for clearing that fight really quickly. So I'm going to put him all the way up here, and this one is going to just stay in special niche until having the player's damage converted to dark becomes a little more relevant. So I'm going to put him all the way over this side with the other damage converters. And then we've got Teefant next. This guy's pretty cute, but he's not one of my favorites, so I'm going to put him in completely useless. Sorry to any Teefant lovers out there. Dire Howl. I think this guy can go into mostly useless. He's a good early game ground mount, but that's about it. And then we've got Maraith. This guy can go into special niche because he's going to convert the player damage as well when you mount him. He's not going to be the best option for that, but nonetheless, he does the effect, so I've got to put him up here just to have some consistency. And then we've got Nightmare. Now, I would like to... Oh, this is tough. I'd like to put this one up in the best of the best because Nightmare is going to be really helpful for farming endgame PAL souls. What you want to do is have a Nightmare out when you kill the Predator pals, and that's going to help you actually do the fastest PAL souling farming method, but it is really intensive or manual for the player, so you don't really want to be farming PAL souls that way, even if it is the quickest per hour. You're probably better off just farming a whole bunch of Anubises and disassembling them, but nonetheless, she is the best at doing it, and it is an incredibly important endgame resource, so I think for that reason, same as Smokey, I have to put her up into best of the best. So let's leave her up here with Smokey and just go with that logic. Gildane is going to convert the player damage when mounted, so I've got to put Gildane into this list with all of the other special utility pals. And then we have the two Goriats, and I'm pretty comfortable just to throw these guys into completely useless. Now, Mammorist is an interesting one. I think this is going to be one of our few entries into Solid, because it's not the best combat PAL, but it does actually have the highest overall HP out of any of the PALs. So that's worth something, you know, and maybe in the future, if defense becomes a little more relevant or HP and tankiness becomes a little more relevant, these guys might be useful. We might be able to notch them up a little bit, but for now, I'm just going to stick them straight into Solid. Really good combat PALs. They both make the top 5 for their firepower for each of their elemental typings, so ground, grass, and ice. But it's hard to put them any higher than just Solid. Mossanda and Mossanda Lux, I'm pretty comfortable to just throw straight into completely useless. And then we've got Verdash next, and this guy is also going to convert player damage, but he's also the highest attack stat for all of the grass pals, so I'm going to put him a little higher all the way up into Solid. Grass isn't very good, but nonetheless, if you excel at a stat in your typing, I've got to put you in at least Solid. Verdash earns a spot up there. Now, as far as Splatterina goes, I'm pretty comfortable putting this all the way up into best of the best. Now, she's not the best combat PAL, though she is a really good combat PAL because her ability is going to allow her to get nice and close to enemies, which allows you to exploit the power of Rock Burst. But also, she's a really good handiwork PAL, and because she's a dark type, she's going to be naturally nocturnal. So she's potentially the best PAL for handiwork. So I'm going to put her right up here, right next to Anubis for that. And then moving on, we've got Yukumo next, and this is an easy up in the best of the best. Yukumo's partner skill is going to allow you to more easily farm all of the best passives, because if you catch a PAL while Yukumo is out, you're going to have a 30% chance of transferring one of Yukumo's passives onto the PAL that you capture. So you just want to breed a whole bunch of Yukumos with all of the important passives, and then you can go and catch other PALs, and it just makes the entire breeding process a lot easier. Moving on, we've got the two Hell Zephyrs next. I'm just going to put these guys both into special niche because these are damage converters that when you mount them, they're going to change the player's damage into dark and electric. And then after that, we've got Nightwing. This guy's not doing anything special. He's maybe arguably a mostly useless because he's a decent early game flying mount, but there's honestly better early game flying mounts, so I'm going to stick him down in completely useless. And now on to the two Jolthogs. So these guys are the first example on our list of I just think they're neat. I love this little pal. I actually don't use any meta cooling pals in my base. I just use Jolthog Crisps instead because every time I walk past one, it's just an absolute delight. This guy's really cool, and I just think they're neat. He gets a spot up here. Warsec Terror actually is the same logic. This guy is pretty decent for as far as a combat power goes. I think Warsec actually has the highest overall firepower amongst the grass pals. And then Warsec Terror is pretty up there in terms of ground pals as well. But they're really just not strong enough to be considered solid because even with the highest overall firepower, grass is just a really lacking type. So I'm just going to have to throw these guys into I just think they're neat. And honestly, this is my favorite pal in the game as far as its design goes. So this is the embodiment of I just think they're neat. I really just want to put this guy into this category. So that's where he's going to go. My tier list, I get to make decisions like that. This is an executive decision. And then moving on, we've got Polaris next. So this guy can probably go up into special niche because he is once again going to convert the player damage for you. Phalaris Aqua, however, does also have that ability, but this one gets to be all the way up into best of the best because it's one of the few pals with the natural level 4 in its work suitability for watering. So that's going to be all the way up there for that. It's arguable that this pal is better than Yormantide because he also has the transporting passive, so multi-purposed in that regard. Oops, I realized I put this guy in the wrong category. This guy gets to go in a special niche, not I just think they're neat. And I think I actually said he does the damage conversion, but he doesn't do that. He increases the drop rates for ice type. So yeah, throwing him in with special niche for that reason with all of these other pals that do the same thing. Now, moving on, we've got Rendrix next. This guy does absolutely nothing. Get this guy out of here. Foxicle, we can easily put up in the special niche because this is one of the booster pals for the ice element. And then we've got the 2 Frostallions. Now, these guys get to go all the way straight up into best of the best because these guys top their typing in terms of firepower, so they're fantastic combat pals. In fact, Frostallion Noct has the highest overall firepower amongst all of the pals in the game. So these guys definitely earn their slot up in best of the best. And not only that, but they're also really good mounted pals who are going to convert the player damage and give you a further boost to your damage. So not just change the elemental type, but also increase the damage you do, period. And then after that, we've got Jetta Dragon. This is another easy choice for S tier. So this is right up there with Xenolord as far as best mounts go. Jetta Dragon's incredibly fast. And it's actually going to be easier to breed Jetta Dragons with the correct passives because you can just use your Kumos to go and capture Jetta Dragons in the wild and more easily get those fast passives on like Eternal Engine and stuff like that. Next up, we've got the 2 Kelpsies, and these guys can just go straight into special niche because they are more booster pals for fire and water typing. And then we've got our good old mate Croagiro, who straight up has a special place in hell. This guy's good for nothing except throwing off of great heights. Next, we've got King Packer, and I'm putting this guy straight into I just think they're neat because this guy's got a really cool design, absolute unit of a pal. Love this pal. Just going to throw him straight into I think they're neat. Now we've got Blazamart and Blazamart Ryu, so I think I do have to split these guys. Blazamart Ryu is going to get a place all the way up in the S tier. This is one of the best endgame rescue pals, got a fantastic typing, and he's an incredibly powerful combat pal, equal or pretty similarly equal to Yormantide Ignis, who will surely be up here once we get to him. As far as the normal Blazamart though, I think I have to actually put this guy down completely, mostly useless. Like, he is strong, but there's really no reason to use this guy over other pals. So I just am going to put this guy much lower. Suppose he at least has a natural level 4 in mining. Is that enough? Yeah, that's probably enough to at least earn him a spot in solid. We'll leave him in solid for that reason. Then we've got Univolt next. This guy can pretty comfortably go into completely useless. Now we've got the 2 Fox pals. These guys just go straight into I think they're neat. They're absolutely adorable. No complaints there. This guy can get a spot in there as well. I actually like to use Flambell to just let him wander around my base and light all the torches, so I get a lot of use out of this guy. Love this pal. Dummard can easily go up in a special niche. That's another booster pal, going to increase the attack power for ground pals. Relaxaurus and Relaxaurus Lux. Now, I'm going to do something weird here. I'm going to put this guy into completely useless. But Relaxaurus Lux, I'm going to put in a special niche? No, I'm going to put him to mostly useless. And the reason I'm making a distinction here is because Relaxaurus, the normal version, is really useful for a lot of different breeding trees. So I actually find that if you've got a Relaxaurus with really good passives, that can make it a lot easier for breeding all of your endgame pals and working your way up in that regard. But like, there's a lot of different ways you can do that, so I can't really justify him going any higher, but I am going to put him in mostly useless, which is a little bit higher than the other one. And then next we've got Lulu. I think we already talked about this. This can go all the way up into S tier along with Prunelia. For the same reason, the passive on Lulu is just going to increase the speed that your crops grow. So we like that. We definitely want to have these in our farming bases. Then we've got the 2 Lylines. Now this one can go into, this one can actually go into mostly useless. You don't really want to use this one for much, but the regular Lyline can go all the way up into best of the best, because this is going to be your best end game, not gathering, what's the grass one called? Sorry, we had to do a quick Google search there. It's called planting. That was completely escaping my mind. So she's the best planting pal. We definitely want to put this all the way up there. And then as far as Brasilia goes, I'm just going to throw this straight into special niche because she is another booster pal. Lespunk and Lespunk Ignis can go straight into completely useless. I don't know what these guys do. I don't know any reason we want these guys. And this guy actually can go all the way up into S tier, and it's unfortunately, like, I don't use this one. I prefer to use Catrus, but it effectively has the same ability of Catrus, so all of the same logic that I gave to Catrus before, I just have to apply to Blazhowl Noct. So we've got to put him all the way up here for consistency. The regular Blazhowl can go into special niche though, because this one's going to increase drops from grass pals, just the same as a few of these other pals we've already got. Meemog could go all the way up here into S tier because this can be a fantastic transporting pal. But I don't know if I'd use this over a Nocklum, to be honest. So I think I'm going to notch it down to solid. I think I would just use Nocklums instead. Meemog can go into solid, but still a fantastic transporting pal. Pansy can get relegated all the way into completely useless. Silene is a really good combat pal, so I'm comfortable putting Silene all the way up here in solid. And it also has the natural level 4 work suitability and handiwork, so you could argue it's higher. I think I'd take these guys over Silene just for the ease of breeding them instead. Like I don't see any reason I would want Silene over these other two. So we're going to throw Silene up here in solid because she's a really good combat pal. And then as far as the Swee and Sweeper, these guys can just go into completely useless. We don't want these guys. Now, these guys are interesting. We've got the two Shroomers here, and I am going to separate them. So both have an incredibly powerful passive, which is going to decrease the rate at which your sanity drops for your pals in base. So I'm going to put Shroomer into solid because it's a really good passive, but I am going to put Shroomer Noct up into S tier because the passive itself is S tier. But there's really no reason to use the regular Shroomer over Shroomer Noct. So I just kind of have to at least distinguish amongst them for that fact, because Shroomer Noct is a dark type, so he's naturally going to be nocturnal and never needs to sleep. Then we've got Lunaris next, and I'm pretty comfortable to just put this one straight down into completely useless. We've got Omaskull, who absolutely terrifies me. I have nightmares about this thing, so get this out of here. Special place in hell. Grintail's really cool, but unfortunately doesn't do much. Gonna throw this guy into completely useless. This one does have one of those abilities that increase the damage you do based on a certain typing while you're mounting the pal, but it's just like, that's not a very good ability. I might put him up to mostly useless. I don't really see this ever being useful, but maybe that'll change in the future. And then next up, we've got Depresso, and I'm really excited to be able to just throw this little guy straight into I think they're neat. Absolutely love this pal. Love all the animations that Pocket Pair do that include him. So he's easily getting a spot up here. Kilmari, again, is one of those pals who I would be rating a lot higher if I were considering the applied technique manuals. But for now, I've just got to put him down here. He is the only dark water pal. So if you could get him up to work suitability level 5, he could contend with the Yormantides and the Polaris Aquas of the world. But I've already taken my stance on work suitability, so I've got to put him down here at mostly useless. The work suitability is still relevant in the early game, and being a dark type is worth something, so I'm not going to put him in completely useless. Easily gets his spot down here though. Then we've got Starion next, who if you mount during the night, increases your mounted speed, so that's an incredibly unuseful passive. I'm going to throw him all the way down into completely useless, get that guy out of here. We've got Noct next, Nox, I think it is. This guy gets up into special niche because he's got one of those abilities that is going to convert the player damage while he is in combat with you. And then we've got the two Bellinor. So Bellinor Labara and normal Bellinor, who both easily take their spot all the way up in S tier. These pals have the highest attack stat out of any pal in the game. So they are glass cannons, but they do a hell of a lot of damage. Easily get their spot up in best of the best. And then we've got Pengullet, who's a decent early game pal for his various work suitabilities. So I'm going to put him in mostly useless. He's not as good as something like the Hen King, so I can't rate him any higher than that. I'm going to keep him down here at mostly useless. Kativa is mostly useless as well, but does, it's a decent early game handiwork pal that you can catch immediately, so it's good for that. Then we've got Lavander. So this pal just goes straight into here. And then we've got the two Rye Bunnies. Rye Bunnies do convert the... Sorry, they don't convert the player damage. They are a booster pal. So we've got Rye Bunny Neutral, who's just going to give a boost to neutral pals. And then we've got this one who's going to increase the grass pals. We've got Gumos next, and I love this silly little guy. Easily takes a spot into... I just think they're neat. I just like... This is my favorite pal to just watch move around the ground. Like, the way he just jiggles around is awesome. And Tantris actually gets a spot up here as well. Tantris is a really cool pal. This one's actually so much fun to just ride around on because of the Spider-Man ability that it has. Allows you to just grapple to things. It's really cool. And then we've got Elizabeth. No, this one's B-Guard. So B-Guard is one that I would like to rank higher because it does have one of those unique abilities where if you get a bunch of B-Guards in party, they do boost the strength of an Elizabeth who's down here. And I'm just going to straight up put these together. If this was more powerful, these guys could go a lot higher, but it's just, the build just isn't that good. So it's kind of cool, but so I'm not going to, rank it lower, but it's just not that good. So I've got to put them in mostly useless. Pretty similar rationale to Nytheria, like we talked about. And then we've got Dazzy and Dazzy Knocked. So again, these guys are similar to Daydream. These guys follow you around outside of their pal sphere if they are in party. Now, Dazzy Knocked, actually, we'd be talking about Dazzy Knocked a lot higher if you had a work suitability because she's a dark electric pal. That could be a really good endgame pal for your electricity generation. But again, apply technique manuals and all that jazz. Next up, we've got Ragnarhawk, and this guy, I'm going to have to make a hard decision here. I think this guy could be in best of the best. So when you mount a Ragnarhawk, he is going to convert the player's damage to fire, but it's just also, it's not quite as good as Wixen because you have to be mounted, and if you're in the Bjorn and Bastigor endgame raid, that's going to get you killed a lot. Like, it's not that easy to do. So I think I have to put him down in solid. He is also a really good early to mid-game mount. I think he easily holds his spot in solid, not quite good enough to put into best of the best. Like Wixen is, useful for getting maximum or max speed runs of the Beyond Bastigor hard mode. So I have to justify Wixen as best of the best, but Ragnarhawk just doesn't quite make it at the moment. And then moving on, we've got the two Robin Quills next, and I just kind of hate these pals. I don't hate them enough to put them in special place in hell, but they're just so meh. And then we've got Bushy. So Bushy's actually quite powerful. I'm going to throw Bushies up into solid because these are really good combat pals. They have really high attack stats. So Bushy Knocked actually has the highest attack stat among the fire pals, well, equally highest. But also their special ability gets them in close quarters. So similar reason with what we talked about on Splatterina. The Bushy Knocks are going to get the most use out of your rock bursts, which is a really powerful melee attack. So I'm going to put these guys up into solid. And then we've got Palladius, and this guy's going straight up into best of the best as far as combat pals go. So this guy has the best stats across the board for all of the neutral pals, though he does share the highest HP with Saline, but nonetheless, he's the best in slot for neutral pals. So I'm just going to easily put this guy all the way up in best of the best. And I think he actually has the highest defense stat out of all the pals in the game. So easily earns his spot up here. Then we've got Broncherry and Broncherry Aqua. These guys are pretty useless. I'm going to throw these guys down into completely useless. And then next up, we've got Trickster. I just like this pal, so I'm going to put him in. I just think they're neat. Really like the design on this guy. He's pretty badass, really sinister looking. That's really cool. And sorry, I just realized I've got Univolt in completely useless, but I have to put this in a special niche because its ability is one of those damage converters if you mount the pal. And then we've got Serpent and Serpent Terror. So these guys can just go into useless. They're not doing much for us. And then we've got Godfin, the infamous Godfin. So honestly, this guy either has a special place in hell because he's just too broken, or he goes all the way up in the best of the best. And I think I'm just putting him all the way up into best of the best. It's an incredibly useful skill. You definitely want to, breed some of these and get your hands on some of these. So these guys have to go up here. You could argue that this one goes a little bit lower just because... I don't know. They do the same thing. They're both going up in best of the best. There's no argument about it, to be honest, if we're being honest with ourselves. And then we've got Lamble next, who can go into mostly useless. It pretty much has the same spot as Melpaca, except it's a lot more common than Melpaca, so it's at least got that going for it. Dojin does have a cool ability that allows you to transport back to base. Honestly, it's just not that useful. At least I never use it. Some people might, rate this a little bit higher. For me, it's going into mostly useless. It's really not that hard to just teleport around. It's certainly not worth a slot in party. Let's put it that way. And then we've got the 2 wyverns next. And I do like this pal, but I don't like it enough to put it into I just think they're neat. So I am unfortunately going to have to put this guy into completely useless because it's just not that powerful. And then we've got this guy next. I forget what this guy is even called. And the fact that I don't know what he's called tells me he does nothing. I'm pretty comfortable just dropping him in here. Then we've got Bastigor next. And this is another guy who's going to easily make his way all the way up into S tier. He's actually pretty outclassed by Frostallion in most ways, but I'm still going to put him up here because for one, it's much easier to breed a Bastigor, and for two, he actually does have a smaller hitbox than Frostallion, so there is some argument to be made that in the Xenolord raid boss, especially if you're doing the Ultra version, that you definitely want a regular Bastigor instead of a Frostallion because he's going to eat a lot less of the AoE damage that goes on during that fight, and therefore he's going to die less. At least that's the idea in theory. So I'm comfortable putting this guy up in the best of the best because this is, you know, pretty much a top tier meta pal for completing that in-game content. Then after that, we've got the 2 Suzakus. So I'm going to just throw these guys down into mostly useless. They are good mount pals and they do have decent overall stats, but their stats aren't good enough to justify using them over some of the other pals we have in the solid. And then we've got Loop something. I don't even know what this guy's called. The Candy Cotton guy. He does get a spot into mostly useless because you can put him in a ranch and get cotton candy, but that's not really that useful of a resource. If it ever becomes more useful in the end game, if we get recipes that demand it, then it might move its way up, but for now I'm putting it into mostly useless. Beacon we have to put all the way up into special niche because it does the exact same thing as the Univolt. And then Rayhound, I think we can just throw into completely useless. I don't think his ability is one of the converters. We can just throw this guy down here. Also makes its way all the way up into best of the best. This has to go right next to Azamane. Again, this holds the highest attack amongst all of the electric pals, and it's a really good endgame pal for the electricity generation, so this definitely gets a spot up in best of the best. Yormantide and Yormantide Ignis can easily make their way all the way up into best of the best. These guys have level 4 work suitabilities and they're both fantastic combat pals. They both rank the highest among their respective typings. So for Yormantide Ignis, it's actually fire, not dragon, that he ranks the highest for, that is. And then Yormantide, the normal one, is going to rank the highest amongst all of the water pals. So these guys are up here. That's pretty clear cut to me. Valet or Vavette, whatever it's called, gets into special niche. And then we've got Reptiru, who is a pretty good ice combat pal, but I just don't know if he's good enough. Like, I don't think I'd ever really be using a Reptiru Christ over other pals. So I'm going to put this guy into mostly useless. Yeah, mostly useless. And then we can put the other Reptira down here as well. Now, both of the Chillettes. So I'm going to put these guys all the way up into special niche. Actually, in fact, I'm going to move this one into solid or best of the best. I think I'm going to put him in best of the best. And the reason is the Chillettes convert your damage when you mount them. So the normal Chillette is going to convert your damage into dragon, which is particularly important for the Bellinor raid and helps you get some of the fastest Bellinor clears. So I think for that reason, I can put Chillette into best of the best, whereas I have to put the other Chillette just into special niche because it converts your damage into fire, which just isn't so important at the moment. And then Loop Moon and Loop Moon Christ, these guys can just go down here into mostly useless. Xeno Guard can actually go up into solid. This guy's a really good combat pal. And I want to do a little more testing of this. So amongst the dragon types, Xeno Guard actually has the highest defense. And, you know, in addition to that, like if he wasn't up here in solid, I'd be putting him in I just think they're neat because this pal is really cool. I'm keen to just try this pal out a little more, but overall he is a pretty powerful pal. So we're going to put him up here in solid. And then we've got Celis Deer next, who can get a spot all the way up in best of the best, mostly because of its level 4 lumbering. So it's the only pal that has level 4 lumbering. So it earns a spot for that. And then we've got Siblex or Saberline next. I think this can go into completely useless. I don't see why I would use this. Now Aegis is really interesting. I'm going to put this one into special niche because I'm really interested to see what this PAL can do in the future. So this has a really cool shield ability, but it's just not that useful at the moment. So this one's more watch this space type of a situation. And then we've got the two Cryonics PALs. Again, these guys go into special niche for the same reason that they increase drops. And then nearing the end now, we've got the two Hangus. So you could argue that these guys are in best of the best, but I just don't think their relevance is quite as important as, say, Gale Claws is as a glider. So these guys are going to have really good verticality when you use them as a glider because you can use them to go higher and higher, which can be really useful for building, but beyond that, it's just not that much use. So I'm going to leave them up here in solid, but I could easily see the case for them being best of the best. They do a relatively important thing, or at least a unique thing that no other PAL does. I just don't know how relevant it really is if we're being honest about it. So I'm going to leave him here in solid. And then we've got Nocklum, who can easily make his way all the way up here in best of the best. So when I kind of stumbled a bit talking about Yormantai before as potentially the best combat PAL, the thing that instantly went into my mind was, well, there is Nocklum, who has the partner skill Steel Guardian, which when you activate it is going to increase his attack and defense by 200% for 40 seconds. And it just makes him, he's incredibly tanky. He does an incredible amount of DPS. This is just a top tier meta PAL. There's no doubt about it. And then moving on, we've got Hukrates, who can easily go into special niche because he's another booster PAL for dark types. We've got Kremis, who does the same thing for neutral types, so that easily gets a slot here. And now, lastly, we've got the two Wumpos. And these guys are just useless. Don't know what you're doing with these guys. Get them out of here. Okay, so this is what the finished list looks like. I did make a couple of quick changes after looking over it and thinking about it a little more. First of all, I actually moved Bigard all the way up into best of the best. I completely forgot that this guy is the only efficient way to get honey, and that's a critical endgame resource for cakes. So until we can buy honey with gold, this guy needs to be in best of the best, in my opinion. I also moved Chillet down into special niche with Chillet Ignis because the relevancy of converting the player damage into dragon just isn't as high as it used to be when Bellinor first released. The power level of that raid is really low now, and you can pretty much complete it with any PAL, so I didn't feel like it earned Chillet a spot all the way at the top. And I also moved Wixen for similar reasons. It's like, yes, Wixen can lead to some of the best speed runs, but you don't need a Wixen to complete the fight, and it's definitely not the easiest way to complete the fight. And also, it's not always going to be relevant. I feel like I want to future-proof this list a little bit, but I will concede that loads of these PALs in S tier could eventually be pushed out anyways. But I don't know, Wixen just feels like its use case in combat or as a combat PAL is just too narrow compared to some of these other PALs who are generically strong because of their stats. And then I also moved Foxsparks down into completely useless out of I just think it's neat. So it turns out I did have the heart to move this PAL lower, and I didn't love it that much after all. And then lastly, I actually moved Reptira Christ up into solid, which I was debating earlier, and I looked at his stat lines again, and they're actually pretty solid. He has the best defense amongst the ice PALs, so that counts for something. And I think the biggest issue holding him back at the moment is just his hitbox, but overall he's a pretty strong PAL, definitely worth considering as a combat PAL. But that's the list for today. Let me know in the comments down below what PALs you think should have maybe been placed in a different category. Maybe there's a few things that I'm missing, or I'm not seeing the full utility of a certain PAL. I could have just got something wrong. There's so many PALs to go through. I undoubtedly think that I messed something up. This is going to be something I'm tweaking moving forward, so I'm really looking forward to the Ties of Terraria update, and I'm going to jump back in and add all of the new PALs for that. But for now, thank you for watching. I'll catch you next time. Have a good one.